Hello, welcome to the Pry House Field Hospital Museum Medicinal Garden here on the Antietam National Battlefield in Keedysville, Maryland. What we're going to talk about today is opening up your garden for the spring season. Now, the checklist that I've developed has a list of things that I've already gone through a lot of it already. But the first thing on my checklist is what are my gardening goals for the current season? Now, we've done a previous video looking at what you should do to close down your garden or put your garden to bed for the winter time. And the first thing I did is reviewed my list from last year to see if the things on that list are still applicable to this year, and then coming to the garden today, seeing what I want to do going forward for this year. So a lot of those types of things I really did even before I set foot on the garden today. So I reviewed last year's notes, and now the other thing I've looked at is what is this year's planting calendar. I want to add some plants to the garden this year, but when am I going to start to plant those plants, and what plants do I want to buy, what plants do I want to plant, and when in the springtime now would it be reasonable or appropriate to plant those. The first thing I've done today coming onto the garden is inspect the garden. And as you can see behind me now, the garden looks like it hasn't been touched since last fall, and that's what I expect. There are plants that need to be pruned, there's things that need to be cut back, there's weeds that need to be weeded in the garden, and that's what I expected when I came to the site today, and that's what I'm going to start working on today and later this week. I'm going to look at my non-raised beds, I'm going to look at my peripheral beds and my perimeter beds, and I'm going to see that they need to be edged and weeded, so I'm going to look at that. I'm going to inspect the garden fence, and as you walk around the garden, as I did today, there's a lot of pickets that are missing. So one of the tasks I have this spring, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks, is to reattach the pickets to make the garden fence look whole again. I'm going to inspect, and if I need to, repair the walkways, but the walkways look pretty good. I think if you have a slate walkway like we do here in this garden, you want to make sure that the slate's not loose. Anything that may have been moved by frost or anything else during the winter season, to make sure it's safe for people to walk on. Clean and sharpen the tools. Now, last fall I talked about at the end of the season it's appropriate to clean and sharpen your tools, but to be honest with you, I clean and sharpen my tools as needed. So after every gardening session when I'm here, if I've used my pruners or my loppers, I clean them after the day is done. I re-sanitize them, and if they need sharpening, I'll sharpen them at that point. Pruning, as you look around the garden, it needs a lot of pruning. We left a lot of standing plants over the season for like the birds to get seeds from and everything else, and now's the time in the early spring to start cutting those back, and I'm going to start cutting those back today or in the next couple of days. We soil test the garden. I soil test it every June. We have a problem with an elevated pH in our water, so a lot of the beds have elevated pHs, so I'm going to test in June. I do it every year. Last fall I amended the beds to help lower the pH, and I applied pine bark mulch to help lower the pH, so I'm going to test to see if that had any impact on our soil that we have in our garden. So that's scheduled now for June again of this year. After I weed the garden and clean out the garden beds, I'm going to apply mulch. So I'll probably apply a couple of inches of, again, pine bark mulch. It's great for keeping down the weeds, and it's great for keeping moisture in the bed. So that's on my list to do. I've already started shopping for the mulch, and I've got that ready to go as soon as my beds are thoroughly weeded. People will also tell you that if this time of year, it's a great time to add compost to give your garden or your plants a nutrient boost. I know I have enough nutrients in the soil here that I'm not going to have to add compost this year. Neither am I going to have to fertilize the beds either. So that's two things. If I need to do it, I'll do it, but I've checked it off the checklist because it's not really applicable to the beds this time this year. It's a good time to divide your perennials. If perennials being divided, that's free plants. So if you want to divide your perennials and move them to other locations on your property or other places, if you want to add them to additional places in your garden, now's the time to do it. Or if you want to give them away to friends and family, now's the time to start dividing your perennials, because again, they're just free plants you can use in other places. And the last part is to inspect your irrigation system. So whether you use rain barrels, maybe now's the time to start reconnecting your rain barrels. If you use a drip irrigation system, to make sure all your connections are tight, you don't have leaks, and the fact that your drip irrigation has a new battery in it, if it's on a battery timer, but make sure your irrigation system looks good. Here at the Pry House Medicinal Garden, my irrigation system looks perfect. It's never let me down. It does a nice job. It's clean, there's no snakes in it like I had a couple years ago, and our irrigation system is ready to go. So now it's early April, you've got your checklist that's appropriate for your garden. Now it's time to walk in your garden and start making your garden ready for this upcoming growing season. Have a nice day, and thanks for visiting the Pry House Medicinal Garden.